It's your boy Gimo Kiyosuke, Legion of Knicks, salute. Back at you with another one here to talk about yours truly, Dennis Smith Jr. Now, according to the Post, Dennis Smith Jr. has asked for permission to play with the Westchester Knicks in the 15-game bubble that's supposed to be taking place at Disney World starting February 10th. And obviously, Dennis Smith Jr. is starting to see his so-called Knicks mortality being called into question or probably waning right now with the emergence of Emmanuel Quickley, who, again, to me, I don't think is necessarily a point guard, but given that Tom Thibodeau likes to use different looks and utilize more so of complete combo guardish guards at both the 1 and 2 position, Quickley is probably going to get a lot more minutes and usage on this team going forward. And for the simple fact that Dennis Smith Jr.'s athleticism is waning. The reason why I get to his athleticism is because the mental aspect of his game as a point guard never truly developed, even coming all the way from NC State. This is a kid who had 2 ACL surgeries, and he was dunking 2 weeks after one of his surgeries. I mean, the kid was a product of the corrupt AAU system where kids are just basically churned out to be these scoring players, highlights and flashy dunks and ISO games, and never really truly developed the fundamental aspects of the game. And even at NC State, he really wasn't a world beater. So everything that we see regarding Dennis Smith Jr. when he got to the NBA was more so predicated on his athleticism and not really any of the fundamental basics of being a top level point guard. Now, maybe he's starting to see that now he has to actually marry his athleticism to his mental game. He spent 2 summers, one working with Chris Paul, this last summer working with Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf on his jump shot. And honestly, outside of a few spurts here in the preseason, and even going back to last year, there really wasn't much of a change to his game. Now, everybody remembers Dennis Smith Jr.'s rookie season where you saw a highlight reel dunk of him dunk on this center and this forward on this guard, averaging 15.2 points a game, but only off of 39.5% shooting from the field and 31.3% from 3. But he did that on almost 29% usage on the floor. And that will speak volumes to years to come, because the next year when Luka Doncic got drafted, there was this whole issue of him allegedly saying that he wanted to be the head honcho, he wanted the ball in his hands a lot more. And looking at that shooting and the usage rate, that attitude was just going to lead to issues with Carlisle and Mark Cuban, and so they made the decision to move on from him, and that's when he got traded to the Knicks. Now, granted, this trade to the Knicks was basically to, help facilitate KP going there, so he wasn't the so-called main guy or the main cog of the machine that was that trade. But again, Dennis Smith Jr. kind of pushed himself off the team, or made the decision a little bit easier with his attitude. Now, granted, once he came over to the Knicks from the Dallas trade, there was a so-called revival in some of his stats. His points went up relative to that year in Dallas. His assists also went up. However, exposed for the lack of high-level court awareness, facilitation skills, processing that you would need from a point guard who gets drafted so high and has such high expectations. For instance, in this past summer league, when the Knicks were playing against the zone, I believe in either one of the Pistons games, I can't exactly remember, he was calling Mitchell Robinson to set a pick high up top and then got clamped down with the double team once the defense realized, this guy doesn't know how to play or break the zone or call the proper sets to break the zone, right? In the zone, you probably call Mitchell Robinson to get that foul line and spread out 2 players on the wing against a 2-3. So you can have that spacing and possibly a nice triangulation so you get an open shot or an open pass or someone get into the basket. And again, those plays in the preseason on offense just exposed Dennis Smith Jr. for what many people thought he was, which was somewhat of a hype job coming from college. Once Dennis Smith Jr. came over to the Knicks, again, it looked good on the surface. He averaged 14.7 points a game, about 5.4 assists a game. But again, he was shooting 41.3% from the field, 28.9% from 3 off of 4 attempts a game. So again, I just spoke to the fact that he was a guy that needed the ball a lot in his hands. And yes, the assists were nice at 5.4, but if you watched him, you never got the feeling that he was this high-level point guard or facilitator. I think his forte was getting the ball out to the corner off the dribble drive, which again, that's a nice skill and asset to have. But when you watch the games, you didn't feel as if you were watching a so-called Andre Miller or a CP3. And again, those are lofty comparisons. But again, as a point guard with size limitations, such as Dennis Smith Jr.'s, you have to find other ways to be effective. Now, will that be from you facilitating on a higher level? Will that be you shooting well from outside so you could play off ball, play as an actual combo guard? Those are factors that you'll need, given a guy who's 6'1", I believe at best. He would need to have those skills, and he just never had them. He never truly developed them, even up until this year with the Knicks. Or maybe he goes a Trey Burke route and refines himself as a combo guard, given that it is fairly hard to develop court awareness and some of the more cerebral point guard skills at this higher level of basketball. If you haven't developed it in high school or even college, it is hard to truly manifest once you're playing in the NBA. In regards to becoming a better combo guard, maybe it's him picking the spots better, be able to play off the ball, be able to shoot off the ball. You're probably going to take a lot of corner threes, given that's the easiest three on the court, and that'll definitely help him get acclimated and to be able to hit those type of shots. So with Dennis Smith Jr., man, all luck to you, man. Hopefully you can see you here as a better player. Maybe you have a Trey Burke renaissance where you become a better combo guard. Maybe you come back as a proper point guard, smarter player, one who also displays a little bit better attitude with teammates. And again, I'm not saying anyone hates him on the team or anything like that, but it's just sometimes you see certain plays with Dennis Smith Jr., especially last year and the year before, where it's kind of like he just kind of had an attitude. And again, there's nothing against Dennis Smith Jr., but there's a difference between how these guys are reacting to a guy like Quickly, who's a rookie, who just came this year, versus how the guys reacted to Dennis Smith Jr. This year, in the preseason, last year, and the year before, where they look at Quickly as the leader on the court, the guy with the hot hand, but also the guy who's being really communicative, speaking to players, telling them or talking to them about where they're supposed to be, versus with Dennis Smith Jr. many times just kind of like this standoffish or whatever kind of attitude. And again, I'm not in the locker room. I'm not saying what was going on, but I'm just saying what I saw, and it didn't really look good. It didn't really look like people were taking to him or his words or whatnot. It didn't really seem like a leader on the floor. With this summer being the end of Dennis Smith Jr.'s rookie contract, obviously the Knicks have a decision to make, whether to offer him the qualifying offer so then he becomes a restricted free agent. But looking at how things are going, if Dennis Smith Jr. doesn't really show improvement, they probably won't offer it to him, and then he'll become an unrestricted free agent. Peace, salute, God bless.